All right, folks, here we go with the final portion of the notes for Chapter 1, looking at Sections 7 and 8 of your notes and getting underway here with the external influences on programmers. There's 5 sets that we are going to look at in this section. First off, the technological influences. Media digitization has lessened station dependence on traditional networks because of the way networks have been set up traditionally, where you have programming originating from one source and being beamed via satellite, or in the earlier days via phone lines, heading out to various affiliates in different locations. The change in the way that programs are being distributed, the fact that you can now do it through the internet and download things in a rather quick sort of way. The fact that it doesn't require physical tape, that it's all able to be kept on computer drives and in the cloud, has really made it possible for other folks besides the traditional networks to get involved in program production, in program distribution, and you really don't need to have networks in the way that they've traditionally been in order to have quality programming available to you. Satellites give affiliates many alternative sources of instantaneous delivery at reasonable costs. Their infrastructure, the way that they're set up, makes things much more convenient and much more affordable than delivery has been in the past. The convergence of computers, telephones, and television has also changed the way that we program because, again, we don't have to worry about things being done in real time. They can be digitized, they can be uploaded, they can be downloaded, they can be consumed on demand, they can be produced at a moment's notice, they don't have to go through a time schedule, it can be as instantaneous as we want it to be. So those are the technological influences. Now the economic ones. The idea that quality, speed, and price cannot all occur at the same time is also true for programming. The general idea is pick 2 out of the 3. It's going to be hard for you to be able to get good quality at a fast speed without paying a ton for it. It's also going to be hard for you to get really good quality stuff if you want it quickly and cheaply, just as examples. High cost of quality programming comes with the high risk as well, as only a few shows each year survive through a second season. And there's a lot of factors here. One is that quality programming does cost a good bit of money to have produced and to pay for and receive and to be able to put on the air. Also, there's the idea that sometimes, no matter how much people are willing to pay, it's just not possible because of contracts and other issues that are going on. There's a lot that happens in terms of trying to make the content that is available of quality, but also making it economical for the television station, the radio station, to be able to put out to the public, while also commanding the prices that they need for the advertising dollars that advertisers are willing to pay. Some shows are cheap to produce, and you can also see the types of content that entails. Soap operas, rather cheap to produce. They churn out show after show, day after day. Game shows requires 1 or 2 main talent, and then the rest of the cast is the contestants. Prizes generally provided for by promotional considerations from clients. Talk shows, same sort of scenario. Couple of paid hosts and everyone else is a guest. Reality formats A lot of kind of the same way that the game shows would operate in that regard. Tabloid news, also very cheap to produce. The cost of allowing a show to grow, also a bit of a challenge, because especially in the beginning, as new shows develop, they tend to take more money because you got to build new sets, you got to do hiring, you got to write original scripts, and that takes a good bit of investment, not just in the time, not just in the space, but also in money. Thirdly, ownership influences. If you look in your textbook, you'll see the figure there with the 6 media giants. And this is actually kind of a bit outdated now. We're now down to 4 media giants. As in recent years, Disney has acquired Fox and most of its properties. Viacom and CBS have merged together. They were merged together at one point, then they separated. Now they're back together again. So in essence, you have 4 large companies that are responsible for the vast majority of broadcasting content that is out there. This is the result of a concept called vertical integration. This is the condition in which a few big companies own powerful media interests, and they combine production, distribution, and the exhibition of programs. So in the case of NBC, which is now officially NBC Universal, so Universal Studios, NBC, the broadcasting company, all owned by the same group. Comcast also in that group. So you've got one-stop shopping when it comes to program creation, program production, program distribution. And that sort of thing is happening all over the industry. Executives at the highest levels are generally focused on maximizing revenue to the parent corporation. So in this aspect, you may have a company that owns several different subsidiaries, and you may find that some of those subsidiaries are not turning a profit. But that's okay, because by their existence and what they do, they're helping the other subsidiaries of the corporation make tremendous profits. So it all turns into a net gain. The profitability attracts corporate buyers who gain economies of scale from multiple ownership. They can buy more programming at cheaper prices. So, when you have more money, you can buy more, and you can buy more than what you normally could because you get a discount because you're buying in bulk. A group owner is an owner of 2 or more broadcast outlets, whether it be AM, FM, or TV. So an example of that would be locally you have Capital Broadcasting, which owns WRAL Television, Channel 5, WRAZ Television, Channel 50, Mix 101.5, WRAL FM, and they also own 99.9 The Fan, among other different entities. And that's just on the local level. You have corporations that own multiple TV and radio stations in multiple markets as well. For example, Nexstar Broadcasting owns WNCN Channel 17 here in Raleigh, but they also own TV stations all over the country. Multiple system operator, an MSO, is an owner of 3 or more cable systems. And a multi-channel video programming distributor, an MVPD, is an MSO that also owns satellite and telephone interests. So again, you see the ways that these companies are able to have their hands in a whole lot of different things. Broadcast stations have a local obligation to serve their specific communities of license and their local community interests. Cable stations do not have such a mandate, so there is that sort of restriction as it comes to Broadcast TV, because they operate on the public airwaves, the FCC regulates them to broadcast in the public interest, whereas cable technically doesn't broadcast because it's all done through cable wires, and they're not as restricted by the FCC. Trade and professional associations provide meetings, demonstrations, exhibits, seminars, and publications on the evolution of programming and on their competition. And in your textbook, there is a better demonstration of some of these different organizations that are out there. Some regulatory influences on programmers. The concept of net neutrality. This was a big deal 5-6 years ago. The idea that the FCC should enforce rules preventing broadband companies from favoring some content over others and from charging fees for giving priority to certain signals on the internet. We actually had net neutrality in the United States with the Open Internet Order that was issued by the FCC in 2015, but then it was later repealed in 2018. And there's a pretty big debate still going on right now as to whether net neutrality should be a thing. There are pros and cons that are debated on both sides of the issue. Broadcast radio and television must adhere to constraints imposed by statutes and administrative boards on top of the Federal Communications Commission. Broadcast stations and local originated cable programming must agree to provide airtime to candidates running for political office. We are actually in 2020, as this video is being recorded, getting into the political window for this November's election, which happens to be a presidential year. Also, all of the House of Representatives are up for re-election. A third of the Senate is up for re-election. We have state campaigns that are going on. And we have been seeing political ads on TV for several months, and we're going to continue to see those right on up through November. Now, some other things from a regulatory standpoint. We do believe in the United States against monopolies, at least in theory. So companies do have a limited concentration of media ownership, and especially when it comes to broadcast outlets, companies are only allowed to have 2 television stations in a market and up to 8 radio stations in a particular market. Broadcasters are nudged by the FCC to air programming that addresses problems and issues in their local areas. Every 3 months, TV and radio stations are required to produce a programs and issues report that lists all the different ways that a TV or radio station has aired content that educates the public about local concerns. And a lot of times the way that media outlets do that is by means of airing public service announcements or public affairs programming and things of that nature. Copyright. All owned programs entailed the payment of royalties to copyright owners. So those that produce the content own the rights to the content, and they get paid for it whenever it gets aired. Blanket licenses generally are obtained for the use of copyrighted music, and there's associations that are out there that help to facilitate that sort of thing. ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, for example. Stations and networks obtain licenses for the materials that they broadcast. And that is part of the agreement when purchasing a program to be able to put on their air. Cable systems pay retransmission fees to cable channels and to broadcast outlets. So part of your monthly subscription to your cable service, part of that money goes to the individual networks and stations that the cable company broadcasts for you. The Syndicated Exclusivity Rule, or Syndex, is an agreement that a cable system will black out a program aired by a non-local network in favor of the same program aired by a local station. So let's say you live in an area where Dunn would be a great example. If you live in Dunn and you get cable television, you might get NBC programming from Channel 5 in Raleigh and from Channel 6 in Wilmington. And Channel 5 could behest the local cable system in Dunn to block out NBC programming on Channel 6 whenever Channel 5 is airing it because of Syndax. Lotteries cannot be conducted by broadcast stations and local originated cable. There are also rules prohibiting fraud and restricting obscenity and indecency. Those are enforced by the FCC. While news programming enjoys some protection against lawsuits for libel due to honest mistakes, stations have lost lawsuits and can spend lots of money on legal defense. So it is advantageous to radio and TV outlets to make sure that the content they are putting out there is not inflammatory to people and putting false information out there that people may take offense to and prove is incorrect and be able to sue for libel or defamation of character. And then the digital must carry rule is the rule that says cable operators are required to carry all locally licensed television stations. Splinter signals are not required to be carried, however. So, for example, here in Harnett, Lee, Chatham counties, all three counties are part of the Raleigh television market. So if you subscribe to cable in any of those counties, your cable operator has to provide for you all of the Raleigh-based television stations, but only the primary signal. So in the case of WNCN, for example, they only have to provide for you their main channel, channel 17.1, the CBS stream. They do not have to provide all of the splinter channels that 17 provides on 17.2, 17.3, so on and so on and so on. All right, finally, the ethical influences. There seems to be a steady broadening of what is considered acceptable on the airwaves, and the debate has been one that has been going on for a long time. Should there be standards? If so, how do we determine what is in good taste? So what we're talking about here is things like airing obscenities on TV and radio, airing certain types of what some would consider to be adult content, things like nudity and adult situations and things like that. Should the FCC be involved in censoring that sort of content, making stations censor that sort of content? There have been times that the FCC has been rather lax on that sort of thing. There have been other times where they have strongly enforced obscenity rules. So it continues to be a debate. Should those things be protected in terms of not having viewers to be able to see that, or should there be freedom in the airwaves to allow consumers to take in what they want and block out for themselves what they don't want? Now, a couple of things that we'll be looking for in the days to come. As far as the FCC is concerned, over the coming decades, broadcasting will be replaced by broadband. We're seeing that come into play more and more, especially with the advent of 5G. And the assumption is that once 5G becomes more prevalent, it may actually be the main way of broadcast communication, at least the way that we think of broadcast, making traditional means of broadcasting more and more irrelevant. That remains to be seen. Now, what will media consumption look like in the future? How will it work? Who will pay for it, and who will own it? This includes debates on things such as should the internet be a public utility. It includes issues such as if 5G becomes a thing. Is it something that will continue to be run by the various wireless companies? With the broadcasting spectrum being sold off for wireless communications, could broadcast outlets get into the internet market? So how will it look? How will it work? Who will control it? And will net neutrality rear its head once again? All these things remain to be seen. All right, so there you go, guys. Those are the notes for Chapter 1. So you have some things to do. You should have completed your notes with taking in these lectures. You're going to want to complete the study questions that are available for you on Blackboard. When those are finished, you want to submit your notes and study questions to me. Also, make sure that before you attend the online class for this chapter, that you complete the pre-class questionnaire on Blackboard. And as always, make sure you're watching Blackboard and your Cougar Mail for any changes and updates that may happen. So stay tuned to all those things, and I will see you when we get together.